Hey guys, today it is the 19th, so that means we are reading chapter 19. This chapter has lots of sections. We're probably just going to cover the first one, but I just want to say from the beginning, if you have questions or thoughts about this, please feel free to text me, email me, call me, because I definitely will not be able to dive in this as much as probably needed if some of you have questions. But we start out in the chapter of 19 with interesting. It says he went away from Galilee. Up to this point, he has spent time in Galilee. Now he has been in the Judea region. That's where Jerusalem's at. It's where Bethany's at. He's been there several times. But if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they really kind of spend most of their writing in the Galilee region. It's when you get to John, we notice that he has been to Judea several times before. But when you think of Judea, think of Jerusalem, the southern part of Israel. So when he goes there and he's close to Jerusalem, what happens? Well, the Pharisees come to see him, right? They're trying to trick him. And it says in verse 3, it says that they are testing him. Now, what that means by testing him is 2,000 years ago, for Jews, there was two kind of trains of thought. Today, we would call them conservative and liberal. Okay. The conservative version is what was known from a rabbi called Rabbi Shammah. The liberal version was from the Rabbi Hillel. And basically, everybody had a thought, right? Just like today's politics. Everybody has a thought. They believe one side, they believe the other. And so much like Jews, they either followed one or the other. There was not too many independents in the middle. And so when it says they're coming to test him, they're coming to ask him questions about divorce. And the reason that they're asking questions about divorce is because the Pharisees were very conservative. So they believed in following Rabbi Shammah. The crowds, the general public, would have been more liberal on this, and they would have been following Rabbi Hillel, that train of thought. And so what they're doing is really setting him up in a no-win situation. If he says that they should follow the Rabbi Shammah, then the crowds will disagree with him and won't like him, which is kind of what they want, the crowds to not be around him. Or if he says you should follow Rabbi Hillel, then the Pharisees would be against him, right? And they would be able to talk about him and push him closer and closer to death, right? So it's really a no-win battle in what the Pharisees are trying to do. But we're going to see that Jesus is smarter than them. Of course, he's God, and how he gets away with this. And so it says, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? Now, this is going back to Deuteronomy chapter 24. Deuteronomy, in the law, God gave Moses the laws and sets a precedence on how divorce is to be made. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, it says that you can divorce a wife for uncleanliness. And that's all it says. It doesn't give so many parameters on what that honestly means. So Rabbi Shammah is the conservative. He says that if she cheats on you, if she's in idolatry, something that would be very, very against, of course, a Jewish religion, then you could divorce. Rabbi Hillel would say uncleanliness is anything that the man of the relationship disagrees with. For examples, and this is in Jewish writings, if she burns your supper, you can divorce her. If you find a woman who is more beautiful than your wife, you can divorce her. And so what Deuteronomy chapter 24 does is it allows for divorce, but they're arguing on what's that allowance. No matter what, a divorce had to have a procedure. You had to be giving a divorce certificate. You had to take it basically in front of a judge. So there was a process to do this. But here they're asking him, how can a person be divorced? They don't care about how they can be divorced, right? All they're trying to do is either kind of go public, and so the Pharisees can be mad at him, or the crowds can be mad at him. Remember, Jesus at this time, we're well within 2 years of ministry. He has large crowds following him. The Pharisees are hating it, so they ask this question, right? How can somebody be divorced? And what Jesus does is he doesn't fall for the trick. he just quotes scripture. He doesn't talk about Shema. He doesn't talk about Halil. He just quotes what God said. And we see the quote out of Genesis 1:27, God made male and female. He quotes Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, hold fast, and the two shall become one flesh. And then we get a little commentary. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Jesus is showing that marriage is not just something you do. It's more than a piece of paper, right? It's more than a marriage certificate. It's more than a divorce certificate. When you are married, it is a spiritual binding. It's a physical binding. It's an emotional binding. It's a spiritual binding. And so when someone gets married, should go through a lot of thought, should go through some context. That's why today we say, hey, if you're going to get married, you should have counseling with a pastor. You should have spiritual counseling to make sure things are on the up and up. You both have the same standards. You have the same reasonality of what marriage means. Scripturally, what it means to each one personally. So that's kind of the walkthrough of what that is, right? And they said, then why does Moses command one to give a certificate? And so they say, well, why does Moses command that someone be divorced? And he says, Jesus answers back, he says, because of the hardness of heart. That word hardness can be sin. Because of the sin of your heart, Moses, notice this, allowed. The Pharisees say, why did Moses command it? And Jesus says, whoa, you're using scripture that's not right. Moses did not command that you be divorced. He permitted it. He allowed it because of sin in your heart. He knew that people would not do the godly thing. He knows that sin would enter in people's heart. And so people would mess up. Therefore, when they mess up, they need to be allowed. So we get one exclusion of divorce. So Jesus goes on and he says, and I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. So Jesus gives us one reason and one reason alone. You can be divorced for the purpose of sin in your marriage, of sexual immorality. If your spouse cheats on you, then you can legally and spiritually divorce that person. Later on, Paul will write in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he'll give us one more exclusion for divorce. And Paul says that you can divorce somebody biblically if they abandon you because of your faith. If you have someone who is saved, someone who is not saved, and that person cannot live with you because you are saved, because you are honoring God, and they hate God so much that they leave you, they break that marriage, then you can biblically divorce. And when it comes to Bible standards, those are the two reasons. And I know the world says a lot, and I know a culture does a lot, but I can assure you that divorce was rampant in Old Testament times. It was rampant during Jesus' times, and it's rampant now. But as Scripture comes, there's two reasons: sexual immorality and a spouse who abandons you because of your faith. That's the two reasons. And so it says in verse 10, the disciples said to him, it is better not to marry. They understood what Jesus was saying. They understood how important Jesus was. Now, I know there's a lot of questions there, and I didn't get into it too deep. If you have more, please feel free to call or text. And there's more, of course, in chapter 19, but time is permitted, right? So I hope that makes sense. I wanted to spend more time on that so people would understand that. I hope you are getting this. I hope you understand this. If you have questions, if something doesn't sit right with your heart, or you're not understanding something, please feel free to call me. Text me, email me, whatever. I'd love to be able to dig in deeper with anybody that has questions about this. Guys, we will see you tomorrow on day 20. God bless.